This week, Grandmaster Nightfalls have launched along with double loot and double rep for Vanguard activities. And the Nightfall/GM for this week is the Lightblade Strike. Now, normally, most people avoid farming this out just because of the length of the strike, and for most people, it probably takes somewhere like 15 to 20 minutes to do. Yeah, there are stack teams that do it faster, but 99% of people are not speed farming the Lightblade Strike, let's be honest. However, I think there is a good incentive and reason to farm out this Nightfall this week, that being tied to the double loot and double rep rewards. Not only are you able to get the new glaive that is the first of its kind in the kinetic slot, along with getting chill clip on a glaive, but you could also farm out rep and Vanguard engrams. Now, this is going to be a guide/tip video for doing the Lightblade Strike, but before we get to that, I want to explain why it's worth farming for the rep and engram rewards. This episode, Bungie reintroduced a weapon into the Vanguard loot pool, that being the Wicked Sister Heavy Grenade Launcher. It is a strand grenade launcher and is an adaptive frame. This immediately becomes a direct comparison to the only other strand grenade launcher in the heavy slot that is an adaptive frame, Cataphract GL3, which is only available through Trials of Osiris, which, let's be honest, the majority of the population of this game was not going into Trials trying to farm out a Cataphract by getting the 7 wins, trying to get the Adept, and then playing on a 7-win card, hoping, praying to the RNG gods that you got the only good roll that people ever wanted, which was Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. But here's the kicker. Wicked Sister is significantly more farmable and is better than Cataphract in every single way. Not only is it significantly easier to get, but it arguably also has a much better perk pool in overall total, and you also can enhance it, something that Cataphract currently straight up cannot do. And for those curious at home, yes, Wicked Sister is much better than Caraxes as well, which is the only other strand heavy GL that we've had before this. Caraxes is a good weapon, but it's very situational, where its best perk, Surrounded, does not work on every boss, because not every boss is surrounded. Also, when you are surrounded, there's a good chance that you would just kill yourself by a grenade launcher shot because a Scion walked in front of you or something. Back to the first point about Wicked Sister, though, it's significantly easier to get. What do I mean? Well, like I mentioned, this week, it's double loot and double rep. You can get engrams doing your runs, and you get a ton of rep per strike, and that will turn into more engrams. Additionally, as you prestige your Vanguard rep with Zavala and get to prestige 3 or 4, you will also be able to get multiple perks in column 2 and 3. Again, something that Cataphract just simply cannot do outside of its one extra perk on an Adept. So potentially, in theory, you could get 3 perks in column 3, or 3 perks in column 4, or 2 and 3, and vice versa. So you have much better odds of actually getting what you want when you open these engrams. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, Wicked Sister is arguably the second best GL in the game, tied with Edge Transit, with number 1 being Chill Inhibitor, the new heavy GL that is a stasis rapid fire inside of the Vesper's House dungeon. Let's get into talking about the Nightfall itself, and then I'll get into God roll perks and all that at the end. So for the Nightfall, first tip I want to give is, in the initial entrance, the first 2 barrier champions, you don't have to touch. You don't have to kill them. You don't have to do anything to them. You can literally just shoot the boss, make the boss leave, then go in the doorway and walk forward. That's it. You will still get platinum at the end of the GM. Those 2 nights just don't matter. Speaking of doesn't matter, you can use whatever class you want for this Nightfall. All of them have great builds for this particular Nightfall. Although I will say that Prismatic Hunter, punch builds, and then Prismatic Titan, consecration spam, make a complete mockery of this Nightfall. As you've been seeing, or will see in the footage, I used Prismatic Titan to farm out this week, and I just do whatever the hell I want in the boss room, pretty much. I get in the boss's face, I zoom around the map with my sword with Eager Edge, and then I just spam Consecration on everything, including the Barrier Champions and the Light Bearer Knight, and I just slam them until they're dead, which also charges up my super quite a bit based on how I set up my build. Then I would just use Lost Signal, hit the boss with it to weaken him, and then Thunder Crash him for some damage, and then rinse repeat the process with the Barrier Champions and the Light Bearer. You might also be noticing that I'm running Ariana's Vow in some of this footage. I think, by far and away, it is the best anti-barrier option to run in this GM. I tried out other stuff too. I tried shotguns, I tried Legendary Scouts. They were just, you know, Trench Barrel and the new shotty's fun and all, but I'd rather just not get in their face unless I'm doing Consecration shenanigans. So I just opted to use Ariana's, as it's a free, ranged, one-shot barrier stun, and you get a free ignition off of that as well for more damage. Arbalest is fine, Wish Ender is fine, but I wanted to run Lost Signal because you get Weaken off of every shot, you get a ton of Darkness energy, and you get auto-loading on it, so I can just fire it, switch to Ariana's, and it'll auto-reload on its own, whereas if I use, let's say, the Vesper Sost GL, I would have to reload it every time, and that's annoying. Lastly, the boss room. So besides the absolute stupidity of the Consecration slamming that you've been watching, the number one best tip for GM versions of this strike, anyway, if you're doing advanced, you don't really have to do this, but on GM, typically what you want to do is have a babysitter on the boss. If you have a designated babysitter, what you can do is you get the boss's aggro, and then if you're a floor above or a floor under him, he will always chase you like an idiot. So if you start at the top of the map while he spawns in the middle, he's going to try to jump to you. Once he tries to jump to you, you go back to the middle, or you go to the bottom floor. If you do this, he will just do nothing. He's going to keep following you around like a toddler, and 95% of the time, he won't slam, he won't do the stupid Darkness Blast, he's just going to jump up and down like he's going to the gym. And this is a key tip, because in the GM version, you're going to be spammed by barrier champions throughout this fight. I believe the first set is after you get his first bar down, the second set is when he's at 50%, and then the final set is when he's on his last third of his health bar and you're about halfway through. That's when you get all the barrier champions, and of course when he goes immune 2 times, you get 2 sword knights and then a light bearer knight. So when you're out of the light bearer phase, that's what you would do. You kite him around with 1 babysitter, the other 2 people deal with the barriers, and you should be pretty efficient from there on. Brief mention of the light bearer phase though. If you don't kill one of the last sword knights during that, so let's say you take care of the light bearer first, which you should absolutely do because he's probably the biggest danger in the room, honestly. You take him down, and before you would kill the sword knights, what you could do is just leave him around chasing you, and then you go around collecting all the orbs in the arena. You would be surprised how many orbs this strike actually gives you during this boss fight. I believe you get 12 per phase, 12 when you initially start the boss fight, another 12 when he goes unimmune for the first time, and then another 12 when he goes unimmune the second time. So ideally, when you start the fight, you would spam with your super, and then immediately pick up all the orbs around the arena, just run past the curse throw so they explode and don't actually hit you, and you should be fine. Additionally, you could also use Powerful Attraction to yoink up all these orbs when you're in the middle by just using your dodge or thruster or your rift, whatever. One last note, and this is especially if you're running double special, you should have special finisher on in your class item. Between creating orbs normally through siphons or heavy-handed and what have you, you also, again, will have those orbs in the arena that I mentioned spawning in frequently. So what you can do is, if you're spamming Consecration, you're already going to have armor charges, or if you pick up the orbs in the middle, you're going to have armor charges. Utilize that to fuel your special finisher so that you basically perpetually never run out of special ammo. And this is really key because if you're running something like Lost Signal and Ariana's, then you'll just never run out of that ammo, and you can continuously weaken the boss or use Ariana's to instantly stun the barrier champions that might be giving you a problem. Finally, keep in mind that you don't have to run the GM version of this strike. If you think it takes you too long to complete a GM for this strike, that's totally fine. You can just actually avoid the GM entirely if you don't care about the glaive too much, and just switch to Advanced. Advanced is obviously much more chill than a GM, and you can run it in a much faster pace without worrying about instantly dying going in orbit, and you'll still get a ton of rep and Vanguard engrams through this. The only difference is you will only have a chance at the weapon to drop, and when the weapon does drop, it'll just be a regular GL instead of an Adept GL. But again, if you don't give a damn about the GL, running Advanced Nightfalls, even with blueberries, is completely fine and a good source of getting your rep and engrams. Alright, let's finish it off with the perks. As for the roles you should be looking for, there's a ton of perks. I'm going to put them up on screen here. Since it's a Vanguard weapon, there's 12 perks in column 3 and 4, I believe. But like I mentioned, you can get up to 3 perks in each of these columns, so it's not as bad as it may sound. Now, the best perks in these columns, I think, for your best bang for your buck, will be in column 3, the following: Clown Cartridge, Envious Arsenal, Envious Assassin, and Autoloading Holster. Now, out of these 4, I think Envious Arsenal is the clear winner, but all of them have some good capability in one way or another. As for column 4, full stop, the best perk in this column is, of course, going to be Bait and Switch. That is your #1 priority in a damage perk if you're trying to get a perfect roll. Outside of that, there's a couple of decent options. You have Explosive Light. This could be good with some Attrition Orb shenanigans, as that's been getting some love this season, where you can just throw on a Aerial Denial GL, the Void one from Vesper Sost, make a bunch of orbs for attrition orbs, and then you can utilize explosive light while stacking 7 shots of explosive, and then pick up a bunch of orbs after those 7 shots, and continuing on. The other perk I want to mention is Deconstruct. A lot of people don't even know this perk exists, much less what it does. This is a massive 40% damage buff to anything that's a construct or a vehicle in the game. Now, yeah, that's not very common, but it does exist, and who knows, in the future, Bungie might make more bosses that are considered vehicles or constructs. Think of, like, the Garden World Cyclops boss, something like that. It would just get nuked by this damage perk. And hell, maybe a miracle will happen and we'll get Wrath of the Machine back in 2035, and then Deconstruct will be the best perk for Axis in the game. Anyways, that's my quick PSA on farming out Wicked Sister, if especially you don't think you're going to get a good chill inhibitor anytime soon. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or a comment below as well. If you don't know what to comment, you could leave Wicked Sister as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.